Now let's go across to our guest this week, Sanjeev Bhasin from India Infoline, as well as Manav Chopra is now joining us. Sanjeev, let me come to you first. Do you think it's all about crude, what happened this week?
Pankaj, there are three things. One is crude, rupee, bond yields, well-known facts that they are going to be deterrent for India. And fourthly, the uncertainty caused by the flip-flop on the Karnataka election. And fifthly, the Nifty had made a high of 10,900, which was far beyond most people had thought that you'd see a pullback. So I would say a consolidated, put together, a little bit of volatility and sentiment getting hurt because of more weakness in the mid-cap space. All that potpourri made it, a sharp sell-off in the last 3 days, which you have seen.
Manav, what's the sense that you get in terms of technicals? Where is markets headed?
See, at the current levels, the markets have breached its important key support levels. After a good sustained retraced rally, from the levels of 10,100 towards 10,800, I think the markets had extended its move and, has started to correct from its overbought zone. So usually such kind of a move looks to be more or less corrective in nature. At the current levels, we will witness series of selling pressure at 10,700 on the upside, which was its previous support levels. I think on the lower side, we could see a short-term correction which could take the markets towards the levels of 10,400 or 450. I think that is the immediate targets that we are looking at least for next couple of weeks.
Right, let's go across to my colleague Vivek now. Vivek, there are a lot of cues that are lined up next week, especially for the markets. What to watch out for?
Well, this particular week, markets did not end on such a great note. We've had intense bouts of volatility given the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty regarding the entire outcome of the Karnataka elections. The uncertainty seems set to continue going into next week as well. Remember, Saturday is the floor test, and again, this is something that markets will take a lot of cues from. On top of that, a lot of technical indicators actually suggested that the Nifty was at overbought levels, and which is why we did see a healthy amount of correction coming in. A clear trend that emerged in the last week was the fact that mid-cap and small-cap indices have cracked over 4% each in this particular month, while the Nifty is remaining quite flat. Mainly earnings season, we are coming to the last leg of the earnings season, very important to track. Remember, PSU banks, a lot of major PSU banks are yet to come out with their numbers. The analysts are actually expecting weak quarters from most of them, given the fact that the RBI provisioning norms have kicked in, and a lot of the banks will also have to take the hits of the bond deals that will come in their inventory. The other thing to watch out for is the pharma pack. Remember, pharma pack has seen extreme selling. The Nifty Pharma Index is trading at a fresh 52-week low. A lot of Nifty, pharma stocks like Wockhardt, Strides, Arcolab, all of these ones are actually trading at fresh lows. It'll be interesting to see if any kind of a bounce back comes in. Remember, companies like Biocon have important dates in terms of target action dates for specific drugs coming up as well. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens out of this particular outcome in the coming week.
Thanks, Vivek, for that. Sanjeev, what do you make of Bajaj Finance numbers? Irrespective of crude and yield, do you think the stock will continue to go up?
Splendid. I mean, I've been tracking this stock for a long time. We had a buy on it on all corrections, and last 2 quarters they were actually very, very pessimistic on the asset quality. But this quarter is a standout, and it's telling you that whether yields are going higher or not, juggernauts like Bajaj Finance and some of the others like Cholamandalam, Indiabulls, all will stand to gain as they see huge expansion in commercial credit, which is a very, very positive factor. So Pankaj, viewers should not miss the woods for the trees, because the crude and bond yields and rupee may be part of the course of the macros, but the earnings are telling you stellar numbers from a large part of the market, whether it's consumption, whether it's NBFCs, whether it's metals, whether it's private banks, whether it's most of the other commodities. So I think use all declines, be stock specific, but for us, Bajaj Finance has been the cheerleader for this earnings season.
Right, Manav, any view on Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv?
Absolutely, the Bajaj Finance has been on a very good uptrend. Most importantly, the stock after a good sideways consolidation, the kind of a breakout that has been observed on weekly and monthly basis, and which has also been accompanied by good volume backed by good news event. So I think going forward, the momentum will be there into the stock. I recommend a buy into this. Not one should also maintain a bow and dips approach. There is an immediate support at 2100 on the intraday basis. So any dip towards the support levels, one should definitely look to buy. I think going forward for a medium term perspective, the stock could rally towards the levels of 2180 and possibly even 2250 in the medium term perspective. So overall, the oscillators and the trend is still bullish into this.
Right. Any call on PNB, Manav? That's a stock which went down this week.
In fact, this stock has been a complete underperformer, and recently the kind of a decline that we've seen, I don't recommend initiating any fresh longs, but most important thing is, it's in very deep oversold levels. There could be some sort of a bounce back or any dead cat bounce, but I don't see the stock exceed above 85, 86 levels, even though it's an important levels to be watched on the medium term perspective. But given a choice, I think one should avoid getting longs into this. Let the PSU as a space settle down for the near term. And so far, the PSU and the PNB specifically, has been observing all series of declines. So there are chances that, we could see some sort of more pain into this, and the oscillators on the high time frame charts are indicating some more downside. So I sense that PNB could even test the levels of 68 to 65 in the near term.
Right. Let's go across to find out some buzzers that were during this week. My colleague Neelu is now joining us. Neelu, which were the stocks of this week?
Not a very great week for the mid-cap space, as it has fallen 3.5% over this week. Let's start with the top gainers this week were Emphasis, which has gained around 14.2% over this week. The momentum was picked up after the Blackstone's exit, and that gave an entry point to a lot of big funds in the stock. Secondly, we talk about Edelweiss, which has also gained around 9.25%. It gained momentum post a very good set of numbers in Q4. Endurance is the third stock we're talking about, is 7.91%, which is also gaining momentum or backed by very good set of numbers here, and it has been gaining on a third consecutive day. Now let's move on to some of the losers. SRF is one of them. It has fallen around 13.5%. It's fallen for 3 out of last 5 sessions. It's declining on the back of bad set of numbers. The profit was a miss, and it was below the estimates. Vakrangi was also the worst performer this week. It has fallen around 22.5% within a span of this week. It has been reacting negatively to MSCI deletion of the stock. Lastly, we talk about Tata Global Beverages, which posted its results this week, which were a mixed bag, but the stock is under pressure because of the current, because the plummets, as plantation operation would remain under pressure over the span of this year.
Thanks for that, Neelu. On that note, we're taking a break. Back in 2 minutes, we'll discuss more stocks, get some more market perspective on the other side. Hello and welcome back to Your Trades. Sanjeev, what do you make of Strides numbers? The entire pharma sector fell after that. Do you think that's warranted, or it could be an overreaction going into numbers?
Yeah, so I see Strides has always been in the eye of the storm in the last 2-3 quarters, and numbers have been very volatile. This specific place on contract farming has been under pressure. So I have not seen the full numbers till yet, but I think maybe the market overdid the reaction on the downside. There is also talk of opioid doses being under pressure and so on, and we've seen the language from Lupin. However, I think the Lupin numbers, given the India business, were very, very positive, and I think sooner rather than later you should see a lot of resolution on their FDAs. For us, Sun also came out, the numbers on Taro were very, very pleasing, if I can see that as a perspective, and I think that both Sun and Lupin re-warrant a very, very good look at these prices for a 25% upside by the end of the year.
Manav, do you think the pharma sector is coming to a bottom?
I don't think so. At the current levels, we have definitely been observed a series of declines since past a couple of months, and in fact, most of the stocks have already witnessed a good sharp decline from its all-time peaks. But at the current levels, when we are looking at the weekly and the monthly perspective, there is no sense for any bottom formation. Yes, there are some short-term formation which are hinting for a bounce, but when we are looking at the long-term support lines or channels, they are yet to be reached. So I sense in such a phase it's very difficult to call for a bottom until unless there is some bottom formation that happens. So looking at the current structure, I think we could still see some sort of a pain, at least in the near term. The momentum is still bearish, and I think stocks like Lupin, Sun Pharma could see another decline of another 10% in probably next few weeks or months.
Right, Manav and Sanjeev, thanks so much for giving us your perspective. Let's go across to Pranay now. Pranay, which are the key earnings that that investors would be tracking next week?